Hey everyone, Pugs here with just one new review for y'all because today's episode is a special episode, Goodbye Krabby Patty. I remember there was, I think still is, someone on the SpongeBuddy Mania forum whose favorite episode is this episode, and I just remember that because I think it was like in their signature or something, so I'd like always see it. I like when non-traditional episodes are people's favorites. My favorite episode is one of the most frequently cited ones, so I don't have that experience. Alright, well, anyway, about the actual episode now. There's something so amusing in how much this episode reflects the real world, like, in a way that makes the line between the SpongeBob world and the real world much thinner than usual, but that's something I'll talk about during the actual review, so no need to get into it now. And so I guess that's my signal to move on to the part where I say thank you to everyone watching the video today. You all are so appreciated. And now let's just get right into it. Well, well, well. If it isn't the 200th episode of SpongeBob SquarePants, Goodbye Krabby Patty. Yeah, I guess I should say, if you didn't know, this is the 200th episode of this show. Remember that this show calls every 30-minute block an episode, so most episodes have two segments, but obviously most people call a single 11-minute segment an episode, which could lead to confusion in times like these, but I guess this theoretically would make this my 200th episode review specifically as well. Or, 200th video specifically reviewing a SpongeBob episode. So that's fun. We love milestones. In case you're wondering, this is the 381st episode segment. I suppose the first question we can ask is this a worthy episode to celebrate the 200th episode of the show? Well, at least we got something this time. The 100th episode was Band of Bikini Bottom and Stanley S. SquarePants, which, wait a minute. Oh my god. Sorry, I just realized. So I was going to talk about how we've already had an episode where the Krabby Patty is in danger of disappearing before, but now I'm realizing that episode is Band of Bikini Bottom. So that's kind of hilarious how both of these nth, 100th episodes involve the Krabby Patty being in trouble in some capacity. I feel like that has to be a coincidence. Well, anyway. I think an episode about a staple of the show being in danger of changing forever, an episode rife with all sorts of commentary, is a pretty great choice for celebrating 200 episodes. So let me actually talk about it now. Goodbye Krabby Patty wastes absolutely no time in letting us know that this is going to be a special episode, as we open with SpongeBob and Patrick jellyfishing. Now, I know that this isn't a special activity, but given how the episode title tells us that this episode is going to be about Krabby Patties and the Krusty Krab, one must wonder why we're starting with one of the other big staples of this show. That at the very least implies to me that this plot is going to be a little more complex than a typical 11-minute affair. But anyway, this scene of them jellyfishing is fine. I can't say I'm a fan of SpongeBob and Patrick's swollen-ass faces, but we thankfully move past this quickly and just watch the two have fun and spend the day together. Oh, this is going to be an episode about their friendship, isn't it? It's actually been a while since we've had that. The last few were during those middling times where episodes dedicated to their friendship were not very good. But given how much better Season 9B has been about portraying both Patrick and his friendship with SpongeBob, I have hope that this will actually be enjoyable. This montage leads into the real plot of the episode, where Mr. Krabs comes to the bargain mart, where SpongeBob and Patrick also are to buy some frozen meals, and SpongeBob comes up with an idea of a frozen Krabby Patty. Mr. Krabs positively loves this idea, and we cut to Mr. Krabs filming a commercial. Every time the Krusty Krab does a commercial, it's hilarious, and this episode's commercial is no exception. The stiff acting, the low budget, and the SpongeBob popping up in the background, perfection. And then the scene with Don Grouper, voice acted wonderfully by John Hamm, and his cronies is great too. Love that SpongeBob is just called Yellow Box. I also love how this episode brings back SpongeBob's love of the spotlight that we saw in As Seen on TV and Model Sponge. Unfortunately, he's not exactly the regular guy type that Don Grouper wants to present to audiences, but Patrick is. And so that is exactly why the episode started with SpongeBob and Patrick being gratuitously friendly. You know, the thought of Patrick becoming a star and basically brand ambassador through these commercials reminds me a lot of various commercial figures we can recognize, like Jake from State Farm, both iterations, or Flo from Progressive. Fuck Progressive, though. Not just for being an insurance company, but also because I've seen their AI ads. Anyway, let me just tell you right now, I think a frozen hamburger would be disgusting, so I can't believe how much of a hit they end up being in this episode. Well, I absolutely can believe it, but I'm just saying my shit. Immediately, Dawn suggests to Mr. Krabs that he could make a lot more money if he changed the formula to the Krabby Patties. And Mr. Krabs jumps right on the idea because he loves money, and this episode is very clearly about corporate greed. Which, okay, y'all knew it was coming. I need everyone to know that I am shaking so as to not launch into a long soapbox about frozen meals and how they've become so popular. Disclaimer, I'm speaking from a US perspective here and speaking largely about the US too, because of society's obsession with convenience and the fact that capitalism has people working so much that cooking from scratch sometimes isn't even feasible. And let's not forget that some disabled folks can't cook for a variety of reasons, so frozen meals are also helpful in that regard. Well, I guess I did just kind of go on a soapbox, but I limited it as best as I could. So, anyway, this episode is all about shaking up all of these big aspects of the show, like the Krusty Krab, the Krabby Patty formula, and SpongeBob and Patrick's friendship. This episode really feels like a union between the plot and messages of selling out and the messages of the Krusty Sponge, because even though this episode doesn't seem to be about this, I don't think it's a coincidence that the 200th episode of the show can be seen as an allegory for the mass commercialization and sensationalization of SpongeBob SquarePants in general, like the Krusty Sponge was. But anywho, I think this episode juggles its plot and themes quite well. The Krusty Krab gets turned into a ceremonial museum with the real work happening in the factory right behind it. I love that we even get an OSHA violation in the tour of the factory. We also see the frozen patties getting pumped with filler, and they actually don't even taste good and have side effects on people's health, but people buy them for the convenience and the marketing campaign. Oh yeah, this episode's got the commentary on lock. As for the Krusty Krab Museum, the workers are replaced with creepy robots, since Mr. Krabs makes literal trillions of dollars because of the frozen meals. And SpongeBob's new job is giving tours and selling goods at the gift shop. And I love how SpongeBob gets rehired, but Squidward just fully gets fired. The way his speech was cut short was also pretty funny, and the episode makes it clear that Mr. Krabs knows good and well that these frozen patties are nasty, but he's so greedy that he doesn't care. Even Patrick ends up being mega rich, and his role as the spokesperson for the frozen patties puts a strain on his and SpongeBob's friendship, as he has no time for his old friend. While this episode doesn't really emotionally affect me the way that Patrick Smartpants did, I don't think it needs to. I do wonder if maybe I would have liked this episode more if it had done this, but whatever. As Patrick records the 400th commercial for the frozen sandwiches, things start going wrong. Not for the episode, but for the sandwiches. The side effects shown earlier finally make themselves known. I'm not going to go into how the basis of this joke is fat phobia because I don't got the time for that, but know that I am very well aware of what's going on here. I know that showing negative health effects that aren't so visible is more difficult, but, well, that's not exactly an excuse. Anyway, we could see that both SpongeBob and Patrick are miserable like this, and so are many others. Squidward can't find a job and has to beg for a job with the museum. Plankton can't steal the formula like he used to because the formula itself has been commercialized. And SpongeBob has completely lost his spirit. Poor little dude. Capitalism will do that to ya. Y'all thought I could go one review without saying something like that? Please. Once SpongeBob gets the wake-up call he needs in the form of finding out that the Krabby Patties are made out of sand, and this is not played nearly as dramatically as Selling Out, probably because the audience already knew this, he takes out the real formula and starts making some real patties again the way they're supposed to be made. Also, I love how SpongeBob was entrusted to be the keeper of the real formula. That's wholesome. And I like how the first patty he makes is for Patrick. While this episode arguably has pacing issues when it comes to how it's handled this part of the plot, I do like that there was some prioritization of SpongeBob and Patrick's friendship here on the part of SpongeBob. It makes that part of the plot more relevant. I also like that Patrick is not so caught up in his fame and fortune, and he wants to go back to the way things were too. Makes this a much better watch than something like Porous Pockets, which, yes, that was of course on SpongeBob, but it's the same difference. The resolution of this episode is fine. I like that a real Krabby Patty saves SpongeBob and Patrick's friendship, and it gives Patrick the courage to tell everyone that the patties are made of sand, which in cartoon fashion causes Mr. Krabs to lose all of his money immediately, but thankfully for him, SpongeBob loves his job so much he starts making real patties again. I don't love Goodbye Krabby Patty. I like it for sure, but love? Not really. This episode has funny moments, but it wasn't super funny, like as a quality. This episode also feels like it's lacking things. This could be because of how it was juggling so much at once, or the fact that even though this is the 200th episode of the show, there wasn't enough spectacle for me. Yeah, I guess I should expect spectacle for anniversary episodes, not these other milestones, but that's just how I feel. I also don't like the absence of many key characters here, and the fact that Mr. Krabs just disappears for so much of the episode. Whatever the reason, I walk away from this episode not quite feeling satisfied. Kind of like if I ate the frozen patties themselves. And so that's why this episode is being placed in my good tier, where it comes in with a score of 7.5 out of 10. As always, I'll be ending this video with some closing thoughts of mine. I don't really have a lot more I can say. I definitely poured a lot of my thoughts into the review, so I'm expecting this to be a decently long one. I even had the opportunity to sit down and rewatch the episode while I was writing the review, so that was nice. I can't do that every time because writing reviews takes literally forever when I do that, but I had the time this week. I can't believe I'm already getting close to the end of season 9. Like, it's going by way too fast. Alright, well, that's pretty much everything I've got for y'all, so I'm gonna end things here, and I'll see y'all in the next review.